My name is Forrest Longman. I'm the current board president of City Club. And thanks again for coming. The mission of City Club is to inform, connect, and engage our community to strengthen the civic health of our region. We emphasize civil conversations and listening to others. We begin by acknowledging with humility that the land where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people, and it has been that way since time immemorial. As always, I'd also like to thank our volunteers who make our programs possible. Thank you. And specifically, I'd like to thank KMRE radio board member Robert Clark, who's producing today's program, and BTV10, who will be broadcasting it to their viewers. I'd like to thank our sponsors for their support. They are Bruce and Claudia Diezend, Danny Neal of real estate broker with the Moyat Group, the Firehouse Arts and Events Center, Colshan CPAs, Opportunity Council, Pacific Continental Realty, Unity Care Northwest, Village Books, Western Washington University, Whatcom Community College, and the Whatcom Community Foundation. Next month's program will be our next candidate forum, our second, leading up to the November election, and we'll have at that one candidates for the mayor and open council seats for the city. In early October, we will have another special Zoom meeting to discuss the ballot measures. So that's all from me. I'd finally like to introduce our moderator for today's program, Amy Nelson.
Good to see everyone here. It's really the biggest crowd I've seen in our return to meeting up in real life. So it's really a wonderful thing to see this kind of interest in our elections. My name is Amy Nelson. I'm the publisher and executive editor of the online newsroom Salish Current. And if you haven't heard of that, I will be happy to talk with you afterward. Our managing editor, Mike Sato, is here, and our editor, Lane Morgan, is also here. So if you run into those folks. And we have several board members here, but enough about that. So I am filling in as of an hour and a half ago. So I got my laptop here for notes. I'm, in addition to being with Salish Current, I serve on the program committee for the Bellingham City Club, and will be the moderator today. The chair of the City Club is Jane Bright, and next time you see Jane, you should give her some kind of accolades, because she does a really great job of keeping us all on track and pulling it all together. So today, we're going to be hearing from candidates in 3 races for the county executive, the county council at large, and the county sheriff. Civic leadership is important, yet it is not easy. It can often be thankless and tiring and requiring self-sacrifice and commitment. As members of the City Club, please welcome our candidates who have put their names forward to serve our community, and thank you for being here. So the candidates have each been sent the rules in advance, but I will repeat them one more time. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. There will be no opening or closing statements today. Direct questioning of your opponent is not allowed. We're asking you to be as specific as possible in your answers. No questions from the audience today either. Instead, we ask City Club to mail questions prior to today's forum, so your thoughts should be reflected in the questions we have. The forum will be recorded and replayed unedited by Bellingham TV and will be on the Bellingham City Club website. So any questions before we get started from y'all? Satpal, would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. I think you guys have a lot of interest in this position. That's a good thing for our democracy. The first thing I want to start with is India landed Chandrayaan on the moon on the South Pole just a few hours ago. My name is Satpal Sidhu. I'm Whatcom County Executive. I was on the council for 5 years. I'm a Fulbright scholar. I'm electrical engineer with an MBA and worked in industry for about 40 years before I became a politician. I enjoy this job. That's why I'm back. I think this is very satisfying job to to give back to your community. I adopted this country adopted me, and I am very grateful. And this has been my desire, where my kids said, "Dad, you must be crazy in your retirement. You want to become a politician," but I think they still love me. So, so I'm here to share our views with you about this job and what we have in mind to do in coming 4 years. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Purdy, and I'm running for county executive. I've worked for Fortune 500s most of my career, operations side, procurement, supply chain management. I've owned and operated 4 businesses, sold 2 of them. I have 3 teenagers, and they keep my wife, Allison, and I busy. And I also have an MBA. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, which means that I'm a process ninja. And that's why I'm here today. There's a lot wrong with Whatcom County and the bureaucracy, and I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman, I'm a concerned father, and I'm here to represent you and your values. I'm also here to represent the people who are underserved and disaffected in our county. We have 230,000 people, plus about 5,000 folks, residents, that are here in the county. And I'm here to represent all of them. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions through these questions. And to give you any type of answers, you can certainly go to my website, danpurdy.com, and pose those questions. I do take those seriously, and I answer them personally.
Very good. Okay, so let's see, we'll start with the questions. And as I mentioned, you have 2 minutes to answer each. And what we're really interested in hearing is specifically what you'll do when, should you be elected. So Dan, nationally and locally, voters are concerned that government at all levels can be inefficient, ineffective, and slow to respond to pressing problems. How would your administration demonstrate its ability to get things?
I'm not sure if you caught the tail end of that question before the microphone failed, but how will we get things done? We get things done with less talk and more action. You don't run Fortune 500 companies, and you certainly don't run businesses by waiting. As a Lean Six Sigma black belt, I have found that it's imperative that you not just study a problem and put things through a DMAIC process, but you also have to take final action and then control that at the end. We have lots of problems that are facing us here in Whatcom County, and they really just need good attention. Citizens care about highways, roads, bridges. They care about stop signs. They also care about things that are impacting their schools, things that are impacting their personal lives. And those things can be done by process improvement. They can also be done by better spending. We're not putting money in the right buckets that we should or ought to. And so taking a hard look at some of the things that are happening right now within our county are going to be critical.
Thank you. Satpal, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I
Very
got
good.
it. Thank you. I think the one thing we must keep in mind, the governments are not prescriptive organizations. They are legislative organizations. And legislatives and democracy is messy. I have 7 council members who are board of directors. They have the money, they have the policy. County executive doesn't make the policy. I have 7 mayors with their own budgets, own councils. I have 2 sovereign nations in our county, and we have PUD and all this elected commission. So this job is job of a chief collaborator, not chief executive, because this governments don't work top down. Governments work sideways. You have to bring along everybody to get to a consensus, and everybody may not agree with you, but you still have to get the work done. So the inefficiencies, I say sometimes the governments are designed to be dysfunctional for a purpose, because you have that kind of, that's why we didn't had kings. We opted for a democracy, and there's a price to be paid for democracy, and that's what we have, and we have to work with what we got. We can't create one new one. So that's what how I feel. That's how I've been able to shepherd during COVID, during floods and everything, bringing everybody along and getting things done. Thank you.
So Satpal, we'll start with you for the next question. The jail initiative leaves many matters unresolved. What remains to be resolved, and what will you do to deal with these open issues?
Big question, 2 minutes. I will try to justify that. There are some things I think public is expecting. There must be size must be determined, and the total number of beds as well as the facilities and everything. But we have a large section of our leaders involved in this process, like Incarceration Prevention Task Force, the council, and all other officials in the health department, and as well as both the parties of our county. So what we are proposing, which has been 15 years in the making, we have been able to come up a great compromise. All the cities are willing to give $50 million gift to the county, to you, all of you, to lower the cost of the bond. So if we're going to go get $150 million bond and pay $12 million payment, I'm just giving you round numbers, so don't quote me on that. With this arrangement, we can lower the bond to say 100 million and pay only $6 or $7 million payment, and have all the rest of the money available for the community programs, mental health, behavioral health, reentry, vocational. All those programs we dreamed of are possible. Thank you.
We expect the jail to cost roughly $137 million. We think it's going to be between 400 and 440 beds, although I think 89% of the officials in the county are agreeing that it might be as high as 700 beds. This is a really important proposal. It's on the ballot for November. I'm in favor of it, and I really hope it passes. I was part of the last tour to go through on June 30th before we had those incidents on and around July 4th. What I learned in talking with the Corrections Bureau and the officers and taking the tour and seeing firsthand was that these are inhumane conditions. We have humans living in squalor in some cases. There's black mold in the ceilings, in the kitchen areas, things that we would not tolerate in our own homes. These are the things that will still be a problem even after this passes in November. And we'll still need a 3 to 4 or 5 year plan, depending on how long it takes for the jail to be built, in order to mitigate and bring some type of relief to our folks that are there, because they're incarcerated with these incarcerated persons at the same time. They lack fresh air. There's no natural sunlight. There's all kinds of incidents, things that you and I would not be able to deal with on a daily basis. But these brave men and women get up every day and they go after it, and they don't get paid very much. These are the things that I feel are lacking and will be addressing under my administration when I'm installed in January.
So then, Dan, follow on with this. If the jail initiative doesn't pass, what would you do to ensure the health and safety of the community?
We'll likely remain in crisis mode as we are today. If the jail does not pass, we're going to have to increase the mental services, the mental health services, the behavioral health services, both before, during, and after incarceration for some folk. The truth of the matter is we do not live in a utopian society. As much as we would love to believe that, we do not. There are people who would do us harm and do us ill. I have 3 teenagers, and I've trained them, my wife and I have trained them the best that we can to be good participating citizens. There are others who do not subscribe to those family values, and they need to be taken out of society, out of the community for a time until they can be restored or otherwise treated for their substance abuse addictions or otherwise.
Is that Paul?
I don't think in those terms that it may not pass. I am determined and working hard. I've been working hard for almost 10 years now because I was there when the first ballot measure 2015 was put on the ballot and 2017 put on the ballot. I did a tour for 6 months of the whole county with Chairman Buchanan, and it was a listening tour. We did that. It was loud and clear. We were told treatment over punishment. And this new plan is nothing different. It's all treatment over punishment. But like Dan described, the current place where we incarcerate people is not a nice place. I think we as a society owe it to ourselves, to our fellow citizens, to create a better place. We are not building a new jail. We are building a new building for the current jail. That's too big difference because it was all many times said, oh, they're building a new jail. Oh, they're building a new jail. They're going to put all the people in incarceration, and it will not be 700 beds. I think that 89%, 700 beds, I'm really shocked to hear that stat. But it will be in the range what we are talking about. Of course, that need to be decided. Now, what if it doesn't fail? The eventuality does happen. It'll be very unfortunate. We have to regroup. There is not money because the only way we can improve that, we have to cut something. And it is very, very difficult. I think this will be a long conversation with the citizens, with the electeds. What do we do? And I'm ready to do what the constituents, public wants to do. Thank you.
So, Satpal, the next question is, what direction would you provide to the Whatcom County Health Department to address the fentanyl crisis and increase behavioral health services?
Yes, we already doing that. You probably heard that Sam Canoni, I believe I said it right. He came to our county, national expert, and the Bellingham high school hall was full. It is so much interest among us because our 15-year-old kids are dying for $1 pill. You know, do you guys see anybody walking around with a couple of ounces of uranium? No, we don't, right? How can we let this thing come into our country and be available for $1? We are also failing as a nation. If we can control uranium, I think we can control fentanyl also. But that's not, it's above my pay grade to do that. But I think what we can do is the treatment. We have naloxone, if I say it right, is available to anybody, everybody, private citizens for free. We are giving to all the first responders. We're giving to all the offices, private companies. So that's a measure for prevention or immediate treatment. We need to do more. We need to stop the supply of this terrible, terrible substance coming from all over and being manufactured in our own country, other places. What I will do for Whatcom County and Health Department, we are doubling down on that, and we are doing a lot of education. We give all school districts in Whatcom County are given special assistance for this very reason, for this very purpose, and behavioral health programs. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to educate people, and we continue to provide more treatment spaces for these young people. Thank you.
The problem may be above my opponent's pay grade, but it's not above mine. Don't be fooled. This is a CEO position. It's not a chief collaborator position, and it requires leadership. It requires people who have innovative ideas, and it requires folks who can bring folks together into a room, very similar to this, that have the experience and that have the opportunities to talk about problems at a very, very positive way. We would never allow our children to do some of the things that our county is allowing our citizens and our residents to do. We need to restore back to the traditional American values. We need rule of law. We need to be able to come back to people and say, this is no longer a permissible activity. I don't believe that we need clean drug sites. I don't believe that we want to keep injecting our residents and our citizens with poison. Rather, I would like to see a more restorative process where we intervene, we bring treatment, we've reached out to folks, we've talked to them at all levels, not from a government level. I don't want government in my medical office or in my doctor's office. I want faith-based organizations to rise up and help us with this. That's where some partnership opportunities will come. I want to see government supporting these types of agencies. I want to see a public-private partnership. Government is not going to solve these problems, but our better policies will. Many of you have read the book San Francisco by Michael Schellenberg, and some of the things that are outlined in there are really important, and that's how we are going to be able to solve problems. We need outreach, we need intervention, we need treatment, restoration, and also recovery.
So Dan, our next question, it is generally recognized that there is a lack of qualified mental health services in our community. Do you agree? And if so, how would you fund and hire more qualified mental health professionals?
My understanding is that we have 12 options for mental health facilities in Whatcom County. And I am going to take the time to read them off because many of you participate in that, and you should be lauded for your participation. This includes Lake Whatcom Center, Agate Heights, Compass Health, Crisis Intervention, Unity Care Northwest, CMAR Community Health Centers for Whatcom County, Sunrise Services, Lake Whatcom Residential Treatment Center Outpatient, Compass Health Whatcom Triage Center, Unity Care Northwest Ferndale, Lake Whatcom Residential and Treatment Center, Baker Creek Occurring RTF, Endless Potential, and it goes on and on. We have all of the tools that we need right now. If we need to build or make more, great, let's do that. But maybe we should focus on what we already have and bring more efficiency into these programs. I reject the idea that we can't have what we want. We're Americans first. We're Washingtonians, and we live in Whatcom County. We have all chosen to be here. The question is not for me. The question is for you. What do you want out of your city, out of your county, out of your own areas and your communities? What do you want? Government is not here to be a tyrannical partner telling you how to live. Rather, we're here to help you and to give you the resources that you need in order to accomplish your life aspirations and your goals. That's what I would hope from you, the citizens, and then also from the partners, not just the ones that I named, but the others who are on the front lines daily dealing with these issues and crises.
Could you please read the question again?
It is generally recognized that there's a lack of qualified mental health services in our community. Do you agree? And if so, how would you fund and hire more qualified mental health professionals?
I think Mr. Purdy just read you a list of all the facilities available. I think what it is lack of if available professional, educated people. This is the disconnect our education system has. We have a lot of kids graduating, but market needs totally different. Market needs are totally different. They're not connected to that. I think that we had put in $1 million in the ARPA funding and other funding from the mental health or behavioral health fund to help a college or a university local who could run these programs. I think Whatcom Community College has taken that initiative to produce more healthcare professionals or mental health care professionals, to be more exact, and we are helping that. I think this crisis what precipitated after COVID was a lot of people retired, and a lot of people are not in the fields. We do not anticipate what we're going to need workforce for next 20 years. The baby boomer transition is still happening, and we are seeing it. But our educational system is not anticipating those gaps and create experts or education directed to what the market needs are. That's what we need to match. This is not a solution that you can do in a fast way. It takes 4 years to get a degree and another 4 years to get the experience. So it's a long-term solution. But what happened in IT industry, we start bringing people from outside. That's how we survived the IT challenge. And it's still happening. So I think that we need to look at our educational institutions, not only the treatment places. Thank you.
So, Satpal, the next question, the process that the Washington Department of Ecology proposes to resolve water rights among the tribes, farmers, businesses, and residents has remained unresolved
Yes.
for years and was just put off for another 6 months. What would you do, if anything, to resolve these interests in a timely manner?
See, this is, I have spent a lot of time on this 4 years. Let me clarify that. Ecology hasn't done that. It was a letter written, it has been 20-year effort by the tribes to do adjudication. And they have requested the legislature, they requested the ecology, and finally the legislature asked to do adjudication. What does adjudication do? It's a mathematical process. They say since 1935 or before, if you have water rights, please bring it to us and authenticate who has water, who doesn't have water. Tribes have the most senior water rights because they are first in time and first in use, time immemorial. So what ecology is trying to do, they don't have in mind to solve our water problem. They will not solve our water problem. It is declared by them. They will come and adjudicate who has water rights, how much, and when they can get that water. That's all. It's a mechanical process. What we need, water conservation. We need water quality. We need fish habitat. We need distribution of water to different places where there is no water. And adjudication will not do that. And tribes know that, farmers know that, and I would like you guys to know that too. What ecology is doing, one process, it is a one step in the process. First, we need to know who has water, how much. That they will decide. We as a community have to come together on a table. We called it solutions table. We all have to sit across the table and make decisions for what is good for our community. Tribes are willing to do that. Farmers are willing to do that. Environmental lobby, environmental activists are willing to do that. And the government caucus means we supply water for human habitat, and we are willing to do that same. Thank you.
That's a decent answer. I agree with many of the things that my opponent has said. In addition to that, what we need to look at is what do we want to be as a county? We only have 100,000 acres of arable farmland. Across the country, 62% of that is typically rocky. It's unable to be used. It's on hills or it's unable to be cropped. We only have 100,000 acres to work with within Whatcom County. A third of that, 29,000 of those acres are in berry fields. It's incredibly important that we come together as a county, as a community, to determine, do we want to continue to be the mass producer, 80 to 90% of the frozen raspberry exports to the rest of the nation? Do we want to continue to do that? If the answer is yes, we need to turn on the water taps for our farmers. That's how they grow these plants. I mean, it's not math at that point. It's physics. In addition to that, we need to make sure that our good friends and the folks that get up every day and they're continuing to produce our food are celebrated for the fact that they do that for us. Food does not come from Safeway. It comes out of the ground. just like many of our other products and whatnot come out of mines. They don't come out of thin air or out of Best Buy. It's imperative that we not continue to put restrictions and write rules against the very people that are trying to feed us. And that's all I would say, because I do agree with a lot of what my opponent had said.
I am going to ask just one more question. I have a few more, but I want to leave time for others. So the last question has to do with economic development and responsible growth. What should the county do? What is the county's role, and what should the county be doing in order to coordinate the economic development activities with the cities and with the Port of Bellingham and other entities?
This is my favorite question of the day. As a business person, I'm all about growth and scale and helping business owners and entrepreneurs get to where they need to be. As a county, we have to embrace the fact that our economic engine in America, in Washington State, and in Whatcom County is in fact, small businesses. We can't keep attacking these large industrial sites, pretending that they don't have a giant downstream trickle effect that supports and sustains our way of life here. Most of our businesses in Whatcom County are all around some of the things happening out at the Cherry Point. We have to accept that. In addition to that, we've got just a tremendous opportunity at the Cherry Point refinery, as they are one of only 5 sites throughout the world that have the ability to take jet fuel A and to blend it with tallow, organics, in order to fly our airplanes and to continue to have our commercial air travel. I'm going to pause right there. Did you hear what I said? One of 5 sites in the world, and it's right here in our county. In addition to that, what I do every day when I wake up is I'm part of one of the nation's largest small business advisories. We have dozens of trusted advisors who gift their time and their energy to small and medium-sized businesses, and we help these owners get to the next level. And we don't do it in small increments. That would be a waste of their time. We do it in leaps and bounds. And those are the skills, those are the innovative policies that I bring to the office. You won't hear a creative idea, you won't hear that we can do this when you don't have a vision for the future. And that's what I get a lot from my opponent, is that there's nothing that we can do. Our hands are tied and we're hamstrung by the legislative branch. Not on my watch. We're here to grow business, we're here to create jobs, we're here to make the cost of living come down because we have more affordable housing, because more people are coming into our area, and we're gonna grow the pie for everybody.
Thank you. Slogans are great, but you can't run a county or a country with slogans. I think when rubber meets the road, things are very tough. We were the first one. I was on the council when we had this new Cherry Point regulations, and we sat down across the table. It took us 3 years. If you can remember, it's not even too far long ago. We sat down with the industry across the table and hashed out everything and created a new Cherry Point regulations for growth of the business. I think what you probably heard, that somehow government is impediment in Whatcom County to the business. Contrary to that, it's not true. We are helping businesses to grow locally. What county can do, or if we talk about Cherry Point is a cultural heritage site for the lamination. They have to be involved. What we have offered, asked the lamination, as recent as a couple of days ago, I was with the LIBC and the chairman, that take a lead, create a white paper for the Cherry Point development so that we can attract these industries of the future to Cherry Point. Petroleum, great. I've worked in petroleum for 25 years, so this is not something new to me. Petroleum has a place in our energy mix, but that energy mix is going to change in the next 25 years entirely. It's changing actually faster than what you expect. We cannot keep looking 25 years back or 50 years back. We have to look 50 years ahead, and that's what governments do. Thank you very much.
So thank you both very much. And thank you for running for office. It's an important thing to do. We wish you well in your campaigns. So Hannah and John, you guys are next. All right, let's get started with our at-large candidates then. If you could each give just a very short introduction. All right, Hannah, we'll start with you.
Me being short, saying anything is difficult for me already. So I will try to make it short, though. My name is Hannah Ortis. I'm running for Whatcom County Council. I'm a mother of three wonderful boys, 12, 15, and my bonus 22-year-old. He's my stepson, but he remembers me on Mother's Day. So with my lifelong partner of 18 years, he's a second-generation commercial fisherman in the area, and my background comes from almost 20 years, more if you include parenting, in leadership in the community. 4 different industries, really focusing on leadership and mentoring large and small diverse groups. So really kind of what I feel like my secret sauce is that I've made it my career, I've made it part of who I am in bringing groups together, sometimes unlikely groups together, to work on common goals, to really find real solutions. I am not a politician by trade of any means. I'm a community member, I'm a parent, I'm a small business owner, and just somebody who loves Whatcom County, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you very much. This is only, we've only done a few candidate forums, so we're testing the waters here on this 2-minute time limit. So thank you for inviting us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today, and thanks for coming on a nice summer day to come out in a room and listen and hear from us. I see a lot of folks in this room who I've knocked on your doors. My campaign managers in the back room, Brandon Roundtree, we knocked on over 7,000 doors across the county for the primary election. It's one of the things I really enjoy doing. So it's so great to see so many people here today. My name is John Scanlon. I'm running for Whatcom County Council at Large. I'm running because I was raised to do things like this. My parents grew up raising me in rooms like this. My dad was in the Navy and later became a teacher and would go to school board meetings when he was the business administrator for the school district where I lived. My mom is an elected official. She's on the library board in my hometown. So I grew up in rooms like this. I took those values that my parents gave me of community service and public service and went into a career of public service myself. I worked in state government and federal government early in my career, then went to work for humanitarian aid organizations running advocacy campaigns on human rights issues. Currently, I do consulting work with conservation organizations and indigenous communities all around the world. I'm active locally in our community. I serve on a City of Bellingham board that helps with affordable housing and homelessness services in our community. I'm also on the board of directors of the nonprofit Resources, which runs the Restore. So I want to take some of these things that I've done throughout my life and in this community onto county council. We have so many challenges in front of us, which we'll talk about more today, from affordable housing, homelessness, to the jail questions that we'll have in front of us this fall as voters. And so if elected, I want to be there on county council to help build big coalitions to get things done in this county. So thanks everyone for coming today.
So as we get started, I have a bit of information here about what the county council is exactly about, which is kind of interesting. It's the legislative body of Whatcom County. It adopts laws, sets policy, and holds final approval over the budget. So that in mind, we're looking for exactly what you would do if elected by the people, rather than a focus perhaps of what needs to be done. So those specifics of your solutions to our problems. So Hannah, we'll start with you. The first question: with the climate crisis hitting Whatcom County, including flooding and fires, what do you think should be in the comprehensive plan to improve climate resiliency and mitigate climate change?
So we're not going to start out with any easy ones today, that's for sure. Well, first of all, I would say that, I've stayed awake a lot, many nights, thinking about the things about this community and things that could be done or should be done. And there's a lot of ideas around that, and not many of them I can surmise in 2 minutes. But I do think that any initiatives that we can collaborate with all the stakeholders to mitigate the climate issues that we have, as well as create resilience, are ones that I'm always open to having those conversations with. I think it's going to require everybody coming to the table. I think not just the county council, but one of the things, having attended every county council meeting for more than 2.5 years now, I hear time and time again when these subjects come up, community members that are coming forward feeling as if they're not heard, or kind of coming in after the fact, when things have already been initiated. So I think when we're dealing with climate, we really need to do a better job of engaging our community in what they would like to see done and how they could help, because we can't do it just by legislation. We also have to do it with the community's participation.
Thanks for the question, Amy. So we do have a great opportunity in front of us over the next few years with the comprehensive plan update. So I'm really happy to hear this question, to be talking about this issue, because this is going to be in front of us over the next few years. My wife and I just got back from a trip down to Central Oregon. We were just north of Bend, right near some of the fires that were going on. And as we were coming back home, our friends told us, hey, there's smoke in Bellingham. So this is something we're seeing every day, every summer in our county. I'm glad that we're already starting to do this. So the state legislature mandated that counties of our size that use the Growth Management Act have to incorporate climate planning as we do our comprehensive plan updates. So that's something that we're already doing. County Councilmember Kaylee Galloway has led in that process to make sure that we're set up to do that over the next few years with their comprehensive plan update. So I'm glad that we're already started on this front. And if elected, I look forward to being part of that process as we have our target of getting that update to the state by June of 2025. The comprehensive plan update is a great time to look to the future and to think about some things that are coming our way, to look at climate modeling and seeing what's going to be happening with our river, what's going to be happening with floods, what's going to be happening with drought. To look at forest management, about how is it that we can have really smart forest management practices so that we avoid some of the devastating fires that could happen in our area with climate change. So there's a lot to be done, and I'm looking forward to be involved in this process. So I do encourage folks, take a look at some of the county boards that are out there. There oftentimes are on our boards and commissions, there are openings. Take a look at those. So if you want to get involved, look at those processes, put in your request. Satpal will take a look if he's reelected about getting that person in place, and the council will have a chance to weigh in as well. So that's a great way for citizens to be involved in those processes too.
So, Dan, the next question is one for you to start with. The County Council has a strong role in funding and setting policy for public health services. What in your background will inform your decisions on addressing public health?
Thank you, Amy. So my wife is a doctor. My wife works at Peace Health St. Joseph's Hospital. She's an obstetrician. So a lot of this comes from family background. We've been together since she was a first-year med student. We've been married almost 20 years. So a lot of this is just from learning from her. I've also worked in public health policy throughout my career, from working on the global HIV/AIDS crisis, the various flus that have gone around the world. So I have some background in public health policy myself. So when I think about some of the things we have in our community when it comes to public health, the county council serves as our county health board and has a lot of oversight on health policy in our county. And there's so much to be done. We know we have gaps in our community when it comes to public health care and healthcare services. The healthcare marketplace is not delivering what we need from our county. We see things going on at Peace Health, from cutting palliative care to cutting very needed services in our community. We've had loss of rural health care in our county. So many communities have lost primary care. So I think there are some things that we can do to help encourage growth in our healthcare marketplace, to try to get some competition in our healthcare marketplace. One potential way to do that is to look at the idea of a public hospital district. So there are 50 public hospital districts all across the state. There are 3 just south of us in Skagit County. And this is a way for communities to have decisions over their local health care. So this is something I want to study, I want to see us look at. I see some friends from Point Roberts in the room. Point Roberts has a public health district. a public hospital district, excuse me. And so there are some things that we can learn. We can also look at San Juan County. Orcas, Lopez, and San Juan have public hospital districts. And that's a way over the next few years for us to bring some more of our local knowledge and our local decision-making into where our healthcare dollars go.
So Hannah, do you want me to repeat that question? Okay. The County Council has a strong role in funding and setting policy for public health services. What in your background will inform your decisions on addressing public health?
So first of all, I just wanted to say that I agree with a lot of what John has said, some really great ideas. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to this because a couple of the things that are encompassed in that, but I want to kind of parse out specifically is that I'm currently on the advisory board for North Sound Behavioral Health. And so mental health and substance abuse services are very near and dear to me, as well as I think it's no surprise that we're dealing with the fentanyl crisis as well. And one of the things that our executive director just recently retired on the board said, and it stuck with me, is that this is the first time that he has experienced in a while where we have the funding from the state for mental health services and for more substance abuse and recovery services. But what we're lacking really is the infrastructure and the people to be able to have those jobs, right? So with public health policy, I think what we need to do when we're thinking about the funding of those is where can we direct those funds to help build and strengthen that infrastructure? What type of programs do we already have in place that are either performing really well and we can build up those ones that are performing well, and then look at the ones that perhaps are underserving the community. And what do we do about that? And sometimes that means making hard decisions that we need to redirect funds to the ones that are making progress, or inviting opportunities for new providers and new organizations to come in and help alleviate some of those areas in our mental health and substance abuse and recovery services.
So next question, for Hannah. How would you balance the need to support farming with the need to expand available housing options in Whatcom County, and how would you pay for those programs?
So as I mentioned when I first got up here, it's that I was raised here. So I was raised out in the North County amongst dairy farmers and cattle farmers and berry farmers. And so I really have a strong connection, not only because of how I grew up, and many of those people are my friends, families, and former neighbors, but also they have such an integral part of our food system. It was mentioned earlier that food, I think Mr. Purdy had said food it's at Safeway, but it doesn't come from Safeway. So I think that there's an importance of protecting that. And within the county council, we already have some guidelines around wanting to maintain a minimum of 100,000 acres of agriculture. So I think it's important that we keep that at the forefront in maintaining that. But we also do need additional housing. We have an issue with not just homelessness, but affordable housing. So I think that might create a good conversation to be held with all the stakeholders involved on creative ways on how we increase our housing without being unreasonable and without infringing on our agricultural land. So I think there's great conversation to be had about that. I'm willing to collaborate with all those stakeholders to have it and see what we can do, because I think sometimes the creative out-of-the-box thinking is often dismissed as that might be a little too much. But I think that if we create balance, knowing that we have two competing needs that are very important, we can come up with some good community solutions.
I definitely agree with the idea of balancing farming and housing, and I think we can do it. I grew up in a community that used to be a farming community, and there's now one dairy left in my hometown. I love getting their ice cream when I go visit home, and I don't want to see that happen in our county. I think there's a way to do this. And one is that we have processes in place for how we plan. So that comprehensive plan update that we talked about earlier, that's a great way for us to look out, project over the next 10 years about how we want to grow in our county and where we want to grow in our county. And I think it's the where part of that question that helps with this question about balancing farming and housing. So I think when it comes to that, there's some good work that the state legislature has done to help cities become denser. So Bellingham is going to have to comply and has already started to do some work to comply with this new law to have more density in cities of our size of here in Bellingham. Some of the other cities in the county have done some really good work as well. Ferndale is trying to get more ADUs across the city. Linden is doing some really great work on multifamily housing across the city of Linden. Blaine is continuing to grow further to the east. So I would like to continue to support these policies and processes where we have density in our cities, which then allows growth for housing. And then that means that we don't have to build on farmland in the county. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. And one is, I think, through policy. It is just encouraging that density, encouraging that growth in our cities. This can also help with climate change. So back to that earlier question, when more folks can walk to work, walk to a grocery store, bike to get around town, that is so helpful when it comes to our climate goals. I think it'll also be helpful for WTA, which is really struggling right now, that if we have denser communities, that'll help people to be able to use more transit. There are some ways that we can have some of this funded. I think we need to change some things when it comes to permitting to make it easier to build in our county. And the Business and Commerce Committee of the county has some great ideas on that.
So next question, what does the future look like for Cherry Point? And what will you do to reach that future?
Thank you. So I think when it comes to Cherry Point, as it was stated earlier, we have consensus in the county. The county council passed an ordinance that went 7-0 about the future land use at Cherry Point. There are some really innovative ideas about what could potentially happen there, as were cited earlier. So I'm interested in learning more about some of those processes that are going on, some of the work that Satpal mentioned earlier about collaborating with Lemhi Nation about the future of Cherry Point. I think we have a really interesting moment here in our county to be at the center of the energy transition in our economy. Policy and markets are already moving in this direction to electrify things, to electrify our grids, and to have more sustainable fuel sources all across the world. And we can have that right here and be at the center of that. We're starting to see some of that. Some of that, I think about things like some of the neat boats that come out just across the way from All American Marine, that they're putting together some really cool boats there for different transit agencies across the country. There's a new marine battery technology firm in Fairhaven. We're going to start building electric buses in Ferndale. We've got solar manufacturing that's going on in our county. The county council recently had some changes that they've been looking at regarding wind in our county. We can do a lot of this right here that can bring good jobs, well-paid jobs, living wage jobs, union jobs to our county. And I want to be part of that process. And I think a lot of that is bringing people together through our comprehensive plan update to look at some of the policies that we can put in place. The Port Commission has done a study of the I-5 corridor looking at buildable lands. And where is there a possibility for doing some more light manufacturing in our county? So we do have some of the land to do this. And I want to be part of that, building a big coalition to make sure that we can build those jobs of the future here in our county.
Can you repeat that one more time?
What does the future look like for Cherry Point, and what will you do to reach that future?
So I will have to say what Mr. Scanlon has said. I mean, there's a lot of information there, and I can't say there's any of it that I disagree with. I've lived here for almost 5 decades, and I have seen such tremendous opportunity happen. Now, we have some things that we need to fix, and we've touched upon those with other questions regarding affordable housing. But I think one of the things that we've done really good as a community is pushing ourselves forward and becoming innovative. And what I would like to continue to participate in that is, how do we continue to be innovative in these areas? How do we continue to improve with clean energy? How do we do all of these things that protect our farmlands, make sure that we have clean water and clean air for my children, for your grandchildren, so that we can continue to thrive in this community? I think the one thing that I would say is, as someone who wants to participate fully in all of these things, is that we make sure that we're hearing from all of the different areas of our community. I think we have some really good urban areas, and the things they've done with electrifying has been amazing. And I think that we have some voices in our rural communities that, as we do these things that are exciting and innovative, they want to make sure that their voice is heard so that we don't put them in positions as we're being innovative that are going to affect them on affordability front, so that they're having to make impossible decisions on how they spend their dollars. So while I think electrification is great, I do think that when we're doing that, we also need to remember how that could potentially impact our rural community and how they have to choose and use their dollars. Thank you.
So Hannah, the next one starts with you too. We've heard a lot about collaboration. So can you talk about some specific ways that you have worked collaboratively in the past with people you don't agree with, and some ideas for what kinds of collaborations might be important as the county moves forward?
So my previous career was all about collaboration. So any of you have worked in any corporate American companies, you know that when you get a room of more than 3 people, you have people that people don't agree, right? And so you have to come to the table and you have to be willing to hear all different points of view. And one of the things that I appreciate about that, and if you're in a situation and you know you're going to get a vote, you know that you have enough people in that room that agree with you, that no matter what you put forward, they're going to align with you and they're going to agree. I think what happens is that we lose the benefit of having those diverging opinions come up and being willing to discover and discuss things that could actually take that original proposal and even make it better. So I've built my career on having to listen and partner and negotiate so that you can find a better outcome than you yourself could have brought forth to the table. So for that, I feel fully comfortable. How that applies in county council is the county council itself is 7 members. I've watched them, I've listened to them over the past 2.5 years, and I understand kind of what each of them have as far as what they bring to the table. As John mentioned, Kaylee Galloway is amazing about climate. I look at Kathy Kirschner, and she has a heart for our elderly citizens and individuals with disabilities and how we make sure that we support them. Mr. Donovan has lots of good ideas about transportation. And I think when you're working as a team, learning the strengths of that team and how we can work together for the benefit of the whole, I think is really important and not something that we always do very well. And I think if we can remove partisan politics and actually work for the people and really use that collaboration, we can go farther than we have in the past for the future.
Thank you for this question about collaboration and building coalitions. This is something I've been doing my whole career. Working in public policy, both in government and outside government as an advocate, the only way to get things done is to work with big coalitions. And this is something I've done my whole career. About a decade ago, I was working at the humanitarian aid organization Oxfam. And one thing that we kept hearing from people all around the country was, we don't know where foreign aid dollars are going. Where are taxpayer dollars going when it comes to humanitarian aid across the world, support for building democracies and civil society across the world? And we heard the same thing in developing countries. They said, we don't know where this money is going once it comes in. So working with a big coalition, we helped to pass a law that created transparency for your taxpayer dollars when it comes to foreign aid. That bill was passed in 2012 after the House flipped and the Tea Party took over in the House. That required collaboration between the Obama administration, conservative members of Congress, and a big coalition that came together. My job at that time was to go around the country, to be in rooms like this, and to try to get people to call their members of Congress to vote yes on this bill, the Foreign Aid Transparency Act. That bill eventually passed. I spent a lot of time in conservative congressional districts across the country talking with voters and talking with members of Congress and their staff, and we were able to build that big coalition that got that bill through. And now you can go, there's a website where you can see where are your taxpayer dollars going when it comes to humanitarian aid around the world. And in developing countries, those governments can now look and see what's coming into our country, so now that they know. And that's the kind of work that I would bring to county council. There's so many issues that require building big coalitions. Not so you can just get the policy passed, so that you're passing policy that'll last over time. If we can get to more votes that have 5, 6, 7 members of council voting yes, those policies will last.
Thank you. So thinking again about housing, Dan, we'll start with you. John, sorry. What would you support and provide funding for housing within the county, and what housing would you look at for low-income residents?
Thank you, Amy. So I think, again, when it comes to housing, including affordable housing, I still would like to see most of that housing going on in cities so that we can have density, so that people are closer to jobs, closer to services. So I still would want to see affordable housing programs going in our cities as well. As far as how to get there, there's some great ideas about how to do that in our community. One is the idea of the big lift, which I know Atul Deshmani, who also ran for this seat, has been part of, and there are others who have done a really great job pulling together a big coalition about this idea of taking the great model that we have in our community of having tiny home communities where people are coming out of camps or off their buddy's couch and getting stable. What we're seeing now is people are coming out of the tiny home villages and are then going into permanent stable housing. Some of the conversations I've had across the county with our firefighters and EMF services, they've seen that they're not going to these communities for crisis response. They're going to the tiny home villages for things like chest pain, or there was an electrical fire at one of the tiny home villages. So we're starting to see stability come about out of these communities and people getting into permanent housing. So I'd like to support that process of seeing how is it that we can get the big lift happening so that we can have more transitional housing and then people can get into those longer term housing options that we're building all across the county. There are some ways to get some more additional funding for affordable housing. There's an idea of taking the Bellingham Home Fund, which is funding a lot of the affordable housing projects that you're seeing around Bellingham. There's an idea to take that countywide. Barry Buchanan has an idea of pulling together a big coalition to see, can we put together a big proposal on that and take that home fund countywide so that we can build a more affordable housing in our community? I'd like to support that.
So affordable housing and our homelessness situation, the first thing that I'd want to say as far as funding for that, I think that most reasonable people would entertain funding that from a taxpayer perspective if there's also the possibility of looking how taxpayer dollars are spent and see if there's something that we could adjust or modify. One of the concerns that I do have is continuing to fund programs at the expense of the taxpayer without some sort of relief back to the taxpayer at some point. So I don't know a lot about the big lift, but I have heard there's a lot of good ideas in there, and I'd like to see how we can do some of those things without additional taxpayer funding. A couple of things that I was thinking and what sticks with me is that I have an elder family member who can no longer live independently. And I think about situations like that and what her life would be like if she didn't have family members around that could help her with her $2,700 a month rent. I think about affordable housing and how that relates to the woman that I spoke to a couple of weeks ago who had just gotten evicted from the YWCA, and asking her kind of what was her story and what she planned to do. We do have some great programs here that I think we could look at and expand. The Opportunity Council, Bellingham Housing Authority. We have some options to help some of those individuals. But when it comes again to the affordable housing, we also need to look at barriers that maybe prevent affordable housing. The bureaucracy, the red tape, the permitting pieces, those are all things that we need to take into consideration. And I think that we should take a really good hard look at that, again, before we do additional funding at the taxpayer's dime.
So, Hannah, the next question is more open-ended. What are your first and second top priorities that you'd love to address immediately?
I was hoping we'd get to a question like this one. I think, what's on my mind and many community members' minds, whether you live in the urban area or the rural area, is public safety. I think public safety, if you're someone who has lived here 10, 15, 20 years, or almost 5 decades like myself, you've seen things change. And sometimes it's very subtle. And then it becomes very apparent. So public safety, there's a lot of things in the jail levy that's going to be on the ballot in November that presents some of the mitigations and perhaps some solutions to some of the challenges that we're facing. But I think one that's hitting really heavy on me right now is our fentanyl crisis. I attended just a few months ago as a private citizen the All Hands Whatcom, which is an opioid summit that brought together people within our community and across our region talking about this. And as a parent and someone who volunteers in the schools, someone who knows of a child who was vaping and unfortunately was laced with fentanyl and survived but had an overdose in the bathroom. I think these are things right now that are near and dear to my heart as far as how do we identify, how is this, as Sat Paul mentioned, how is it getting into our community? What are we doing to hold those individuals accountable who are distributing this to our children? I don't know anything that is out there right now that costs $1. I mean, $1. And it's easily accessible. And I think that when we look at overdoses, we look at the rate of increase in our homelessness, it's affecting that later teenage to young adult period. And I'd like to know, as a county council, what are some things that we can do to mitigate that and eventually stop the bleeding that we have in this crisis?
So the top priorities, if you check out my website, electjohnscanlon.com, my top priorities are all about affordability. There are too many families, too many elderly folks in our community who cannot afford to live here anymore, and we're starting to lose people in our county. We need to help people to be able to live here. And I think that comes through a number of different ways. We talked about affordable housing, so I want to look at some of those ideas about how we do cut some of that red tape and bureaucracy. There are some great proposals out there from our Business and Commerce Committee of the county about how to do some of that and how to help housing occur in our community. I like to support the density ideas I mentioned earlier and how we bring in some more funding for affordability. I know that public safety is just going to be on the agenda because it's on the ballot in November. So whether or not the jail initiative passes or fails, it's going to be atop the agenda for county council next year. So if it passes, my job, if elected on county council, will be to make sure that it's the best thing that we can possibly get. And so we talked earlier about some of the gaps, some of the questions that are out there about that initiative. There's still a lot of things to be defined, including the partnership between the county and the 7 cities regarding that tax revenue. How is it that we can fill this gap where that initiative has a 4-year gap for funding for behavioral health and substance use treatment? A lot of that is going to require advocacy in Olympia and in DC to bring in state funding and federal funding in our community to help fill that gap. If the initiative doesn't pass, then we got to go back to square one and build a coalition to build that new community facility, because I do believe we need a new jail. When you look at that facility, I've done the tour. To me, it's a labor rights crisis in our county. It's a human rights crisis for anybody who has to spend time there. I do think we need a new facility. So if it doesn't pass, I'd look at 2024. It's an election year. A lot more people vote in a presidential election year. And so that might be a better time to come back if it doesn't pass this year and to make sure there's a big coalition involved.
Thank you. We have a bit of time for you to cover anything that we haven't questioned about today. So I guess, John, it's your turn.
So we talked about a lot of different issues today. And I'm thankful for all the questions that came in from the audience, from people who were able to take time to send questions in online. I'd encourage you to go check out my website, electjohnscanlon.com. Take a look at my background, take a look at my experience, and take a look at who supports me. I have endorsements from 4 members of our current county council, from Executive Sidhu, State Senators Sharon Shoemake and Liz Lovelet, State Representatives Alex Rammel, Deborah Lekanoff, and Joe Timmons, a number of city council members, all across our community. Our PUD, 3 of the commissioners on our PUD, including Atul, who's here, have endorsed me and support me in this race. I'm building a big coalition, so take a look at that. If you have any questions for me, please reach out. My contact information is on my website, electjonscanlon.com. I'd be happy to meet, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about me, my campaign, my priorities, or to hear more from you about what you think our community ought to be doing. What should Whatcom County be doing? I want to hear more from you on that, so please reach out. Thanks for coming today.
So I as well have a website. It's hannahforwhatcom.com. One of the things that I want to end in closing is, like I shared before, I'm not a politician. So I'm a public speaker, and I could talk to you all day long about any topic and feel completely comfortable, but you put a 2-minute time limit on me and I'm like a deer in the headlights. So I apologize for that. But what I can okay. So what I can say is that I love Whatcom County. I want to see the things that are broken fixed. But I don't look at that as a negative. I look at it as opportunities to make things better again. The childhood that I remember, the childhood I want my children to have, the childhood that I want your children to have, and the place that we can come together and know that our elderly population is taken care of. My parents live here, and I want them to be able to enjoy their retirement. So in closing, all I wanted to share is I have a lot of ideas, and not a lot of them I can explain to you concisely in 2 minutes, and I do apologize for that. But I am willing to have the conversation at any time with anyone so that we can create real solutions, so that we can spend our tax dollars appropriately in the right place, so that we can get some things done. We've done really good things in certain areas, and there's areas that we're missing. I want to attack those areas so that we can all be comfortable and safe living in a community with good governance and public service individuals that are really here to service the people. I'd like to be one of those for you.
Well, thank you both, John and Hannah, and thank you also for running for office. So we'll take just a minute to bring our sheriff candidates over. So we're wrapping up our forum today with our 2 candidates for Whatcom County Sheriff, Donald Tanksley and Doug Chadwick. And if you both would start with just a short, who am I? That would be great.
Well, good afternoon. My name's Doug Chadwick. I'm currently the undersheriff with the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office. I've been there 29 years. So I started as a patrol deputy like everybody else does, and I've worked my way up through the organization, and currently serving as second in command to Sheriff Elfo. And I've been in that position for the last 5 years. So on top of what I've done at the Sheriff's Office, I am a lifelong resident here at Whatcom County. I grew up in the Mount Baker foothills. I attended Western Washington University. I have a degree in biology, which some may think doesn't transition very well to law enforcement, but I find it useful quite frequently. So we're just one big ecosystem. At any rate, again, after Western, I was hired by the Sheriff's Office. So I live here with my wife, Laura, my 2 kids. My daughter's pursuing a career in nursing, and my son's currently in high school. So I experienced some of those challenges that the rest of you do. At the end of the day, I'm running for Sheriff of Whatcom County because this is the only home I've known. I believe in keeping Whatcom County safe, and I want to keep it a safe place for my family, your family, and future generations. So thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you. I'm Donnell Tanksley, Chief of Police with the City of Blaine, and I came to Whatcom County in 2014 by way of St. Louis, Missouri. So I've been in public service for 38 years. I joined the military at 17 and did 22 faithful years to our country. I retired as a first sergeant from the 131st Fighter Wing out of St. Louis, and I was responsible for over the readiness of 600 airmen with the 131st Fighter Wing in St. Louis. While in St. Louis, I had the opportunity to rise to the rank of lieutenant. In St. Louis, as a lieutenant, I was also the commander of the Special Operations Task Force in South St. Louis, which has a population of about 100,000 people. And the task force I commanded had 2 sergeants and 12 detectives, including a set of gang detectives, narcotic detectives, and juvenile detectives, who, by the way, were all cross-trained to do those different things. I also, after I retired from St. Louis, I came to WW as their assistant police chief and worked here in Bellingham for 3 years. From there, I went to Portland State University as their assistant chief, and now I'm the chief in Blaine. So I am the only candidate with actually law enforcement CEO experience. Additionally, I graduated from Northwestern University School of Command College, which is a 10-week in-depth course for law enforcement executives, and we studied resource allocation, um, organizational behavior, budgeting, and things of that nature. So also I have a master's degree in management, a bachelor's degree, 2 associates in criminal justice, 1 associate's in human resource management, and an associate's in education and training. Thank you.
Very good. So the first question will go to you, Tank. It is about policing philosophy. As sheriff, do you think it's important to build trust with the community? And if so, how would you plan to go about doing that?
Absolutely, it's important to build trust. You know, I'll tell you, I got into law enforcement by some unjust police officers on a roadway, on a highway in St. Louis when I was 19 years old, when I lived in Ferguson, Missouri. That's how I got here today, by dealing with some police officers that were just not right. So I believe that in policing that we certainly have to make sure that people are held accountable to ensure that we have the rule of law. But we also have to make sure that as police officers, we treat people with dignity, we treat people with compassion, and we build trust among people. I believe it's critically important. And that's the reason why I've been teaching fair and impartial policing since 2015. And in fact, my opponent here, he and I taught together on one occasion. Um, but I think the difference is that I've been consistently teaching it for many years. And in fact, just last December, I taught 3 courses to Skagit County Department of Corrections, fair and impartial policing. So it's important to me that every encounter that the police have or a deputy has with the public, that they trust us, that they know that they're going to be treated with dignity and we're never going to mistreat a person. So I believe it's important to build trust.
Well, thank you. Like my opponent said, we were co-instructors for fair and impartial policing, so I certainly ascribe to that. So again, I certainly believe in professional policing and the public trust. Law enforcement cannot do their job without the trust of the public. We need their cooperation, and really we need them to recognize our authority to do our job, follow the rule of law. As far as how we gain that public trust, fair and impartial policing is one piece of that. The next piece is procedural justice, which really talks about the process, not the outcome. So how you deal with people on a day-to-day basis. I always tell our people, every contact, every traffic stop, every contact with a citizen is an advertisement for not just the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, but law enforcement. So how you treat people with dignity and respect is what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember the outcome. They're going to remember how they were treated. And that's how we build public trust. It starts with fair and impartial policing, which is part of any professional law enforcement's toolbox. We focus on procedural justice, and then at that point we have what's referred to as police legitimacy, which is when we've achieved that public trust, where the public accepts us and sees us as a partner in public safety.
So let's see, we'll start with Doug this time. How will you work with the prosecutor's office to maximize the efficacy of diversion programs and the timely processing of those detained?
Well, currently we have one of the main diversion programs we have here in Whatcom County is the LEAD program, which is law enforcement assisted diversion. That can actually happen in the field when an officer or a deputy comes in contact with somebody. Rather than make an arrest, they can try and refer them to services and hopefully get them the help. A lot of times we deal with people, whether it's criminal activity, but the root cause of that is related to mental illness or substance use disorders. So really focusing on trying to get them to the right resources and not necessarily arrest. And we also do that from the jail. So we have classification officers and people within the jail that will refer people to that program if they feel that that is best for them. So once they're released, there are social workers, caseworkers that would interface with them and again, get them to the service they need. And maybe that's income support, maybe that's housing support, maybe that's mental health treatment or substance use treatment. But really the goal of that is jail's not the appropriate place for them to get those services and treatment. Now, in some cases, jail is a point of intervention for folks and maybe the catalyst to get them to treatment. But we really look at some of these lower level crimes, shoplifting, trespass, things like that, that are interrelated to homelessness, mental health, substance disorder, and try and get them the treatment they need so that we don't see this repeated cycle of recidivism and coming through the door of the jail on a regular basis.
Well, thank you. I certainly intend on working hand in hand with the prosecutor's office, but once a person is arrested and if they're at the level of the prosecutor's office, some might not even call that a diversion. Some may call that a pass-through. True diversion is by way of diverting the person from the criminal legal system to not even get to that point. So I believe that not only would I work hand in hand with the prosecutor's office, but we also need to look at ways whereby people could get treatment, people could get help. We could offer people job services. Perhaps we could partnership with BTC, WCC, maybe partnership with some labor unions, have some incarceration or pre-incarceration to apprenticeship pipelines. So really diversion is being diverted throughout around the criminal justice system, not within the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Along with this, working with the prosecutor's office on diversion is the timely processing of detainees. So what are your ideas on how to work with the prosecutor's office on that? Start with you, Tank.
Sure. So the timelessness of processing. So as we know that traditionally most people that are incarcerated are on pretrial, that they're waiting in jail for a trial. So one of the things that we certainly can attempt to do is try to increase the amount of people that are on electronic monitoring services. We could also take a look at which some cities, in fact, St. Louis, which I worked there 21 years, we had a warrant reduction program. Some people call it an amnesty program, whereby you actually bring people in and work with the prosecutors, work with the public defender's office, and to work with social services to see how people could work out a payment, perhaps, they might be in a tight crunch and things of that nature. So the processing, I think that there's a lot we can do. I think we can all agree that the most expensive thing that we could do is arrest a person. Jail is very expensive, but like Under Sheriff Chadwick said, sometimes we do have to arrest people, and I recognize that, and we will. But certainly, the cost of incarceration, not only to the people that are incarcerated, their families, but actually to the cost of cities. In the city of Blaine, literally, we just paid for 1 month of incarceration over $6,000 for 4 people. And that was just a couple weeks ago. So it's very expensive. So if we really take a look at how much money are we spending collectively, not just as a county, but as a city, and to see how we could perhaps get the process going. But I do think we also need to involve the public defender's office and other social services.
Well, Mr. Tankley is right. We do have a lot of people there are pre-trial. We've been on severe booking restrictions, quite frankly, since, well, it was before 2019, but starting in 2019, 2020, they became very severe booking restrictions. So very few people are being booked on low-level crimes. So most of the people in there are being booked on felonies, violent felonies, quite frankly, and they just pose an ongoing risk to the public if they were to be released. Unfortunately, we have a backlog in the court system because of COVID. So it's not just the courts, but also the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office need to work together to try and move those cases through the system. And maybe that's, sentencing, maybe that's diverting them to some kind of treatment option through mental health court or drug court. But there are options for that. Lost my train of thought there. As far as the other thing that's causing a backlog in the jail is competency hearings. We have probably at any time 20 to 30 people within the jail that are awaiting to go to Western State for competency to see if they're even able to stand trial. In the meantime, they are there. They have not been convicted. They have not had their day of court, and we have the same thing happening with trying to find defense attorneys for people that are currently in custody. So it's unfortunate. We do have fairly robust jail alternative programs within the sheriff's office. But unfortunately, a lot of those programs are based on, our work crews are based on sentenced offenders. And right now, we have very few sentenced offenders. But they go out, they're able to hold a job. They go out and do community service. They clean up the sides of the roads. They work in the parks. We contract with the National Park Service to build trails. So we do a lot of things to try and not have them in custody, but holding them accountable at the same time.
Thank you. So the next question, if the jail initiative passes in November, it'll be at least 5 years before a new jail is operational. What can be done in the interim to assure health and safety in our community when the jail is already full? What can be done in the interim to meet the behavioral health and safety needs of those who are arrested and incarcerated?
Great question. And again, it's certainly on the minds of everybody. I think over the last 5 years, most of the meetings I've been in have been really focused on homelessness, behavioral health, and substance use, and quite frankly, the intersection with law enforcement. So, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I just lost it there.
If the jail initiative passes in November, it'll be at least 5 years before new jail is operational. What can be done in the interim to assure health and safety in our community? What can be done to meet the behavioral health and safety needs of those who are arrested and incarcerated?
Okay. Again, even if the jail initiative passes this November, we're still 5 years out from construction. The current jail, and we have about 362 beds between the downtown jail and the work center. And again, we're on severe booking restrictions. If we don't find an alternative, we'll continue to be on booking restrictions, and that poses a risk to public safety. I would certainly advocate for some kind of temporary facility that maybe expands that capacity. Unfortunately, that requires more staffing resources and more money. The other thing that we can do, and we've done in the past, unfortunately, a lot of jails around the state have the same staffing issues we have, is looking to contract with maybe Snow County. We've contracted with Yakima in the past. We've contracted with Kittitas County. So maybe moving some of these people to other facilities, especially if they're a little more long-term, and making sure that we have room to hold people accountable that pose an ongoing risk to public safety.
Well, I think one thing that we really could do right now is just every single case, take a look at why we're holding a person for how long and what their charges are. And I think if the jail bill passes, or even if it doesn't pass, what we really have to think about is what are we going to do that we haven't done? How will we look at the mistakes that's been made of the last 20 years for the actual jail, the maintenance of the jail, and how can we not make those same mistakes? So we can't wait 5 years. So I think we need to really put some people together, get some community voices together, not just public officials like myself and government officials, to really kind of roll our sleeves up to see how we could help people. Because what we know is that we can't arrest our way out of this situation. So how do we get people help? How do we really take a look at the systems that hadn't worked. How do we hire more behavioral health specialists? How do we hire more reentry specialists? How do we do this as a community? And I will tell you that this is bigger than the sheriff's department. This is a community issue. This is a humanitarian issue. So I think it's time to get to work. Thank you.
So, Tank, the next question starts with you. The Whatcom County Justice Project Needs Assessment Report identified the proximity of services such as bus lines, courthouse, public defender's office, sheriff's office, and hospital as important considerations when deciding where to locate a new jail. How would you address and fund solutions to these concerns if a new jail is located in Ferndale? And can you share with us your views on the benefits and drawbacks of proposed jail sites?
Sure. So I will tell you, and a lot of people know, originally I believed and I supported that the jail should be downtown. And the reason is because it was right in the city center. Most of the services are located downtown. Once I learned more and understood more, the location in Ferndale does offer a bigger space in order to provide services. And with any facility, I believe that it's important to have services and classes and education while people are temporarily incarcerated. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that the Ferndale location is a good location. But the issue that we still have to tackle is how do we transport safely people from downtown, from Sumas, from different areas to Ferndale. We also have to consider transportation within the Department of Corrections, the Bureau of Corrections, from there. We also have to consider when a person is released from jail, how do we release a person? It's important that we don't just let a person out and say, hey, here you go. I could tell you, a few years ago, I was in Marion County, Oregon, and at some law enforcement training, and I saw a lady walking down the road with a black plastic bag. She was just released from prison. She had about a mile and a half walk to the nearest bus stop. That's what we don't want to do. We want to make sure that people are released to a safe place, a place where they could get help, a place where we could do a warm handoff to a mentor. That's what I would suggest.
Again, when we look at the various jail sites, there's either the downtown jail, there's the property outlet division, or there's the Ferndale property. And we look at the best location for a facility. Obviously, downtown near the services is preferred by a lot of people. Unfortunately, the downtown and the Division Street location aren't good locations to build what we need now and give us the ability in the future if we had to grow the space to do that. So if we move out to Ferndale, we're able to build a horizontal facility that we build to meet the current needs and the needs in the immediate future, but we also have the capacity if Whatcom County continues to grow and we have the need to maybe add a pod, something like that. But part of that facility also needs to include behavioral health services. We do not have adequate behavioral health services within the current jail, and quite frankly, it's just because of space. I recently took a trip with some other folks from the community to Nashville, Tennessee to look at their systems there. And they have a very robust jail system. They have both a downtown and remote facilities, but they have a behavioral care center within their facility where people are assessed when they come in. And if they volunteer to be a part of that program, they can go. It's a 30-day program to start. It's not necessarily a treatment program, but it's able to get folks stabilized so that when they leave, they at least have a plan for moving forward. And again, Mr. Tanksley is absolutely right. They need that warm handoff. We need a navigator that is there when they're released at the door to walk them across. I would advocate for a homeless navigation center adjacent to that facility where they can go, have some temporary housing, get some help with treatment and counseling and things like that. So again, they're not just going out the door, walking in the streets and going right back to the lifestyle that got them in jail to begin with.
So, Doug, the next question is, How will you work with the tribes, particularly to locate missing and murdered Indigenous women?
Well, we have at the sheriff's office, like I said, I've been with the sheriff's office for 29 years. We have had a strong relationship with both the Lummi Nation Police Department and more recently the Nooksack Tribal Police Department. When I started, Nooksack didn't have their own police department. But through the state patrol, similar to Amber Alerts, Silver Alerts, we can put out alerts statewide through our information systems to help us locate missing and endangered Indigenous women. So again, we work very closely with the Lummi Nation Police Department. And like I said, we've had jurisdiction out there in the past. They've moved more to a general authority concept where they have jurisdiction over both tribal and non-tribal members. In the past, they would have the jurisdiction over tribal, and we would have the non-tribal members that lived out there. But again, we work very closely. We support them. And again, we would be able to assist in any way possible.
Well, thank you. So I actually sit on the law enforcement subcommittee of that committee. And we just met last week. And one of the things that we talked about, and on the subcommittee, it's law enforcement and tribal law enforcement leaders and the Attorney General's office. We're just brainstorming ways to have better partnerships with tribal and local and municipal police departments. So one of the ideas I have for Whatcom County Sheriff's Office is to have a tribal liaison deputy, and a deputy that is charged with making those connections with both our tribes here. I've actually had meetings with both of the chiefs of police with each tribal organization, and to actually sit down at the table and have regular meetings to see how we could better collaborate and do resource allocation. Thank you.
So next question is, starting with you, Tank. According to the Whatcom County Sheriff webpage, primary function of the sheriff is to advocate for improvement and efficiencies in the criminal justice, mental health, and safety systems. What do you advocate for in that area?
Sure. So I advocate that every deputy should be a crisis intervention trained officer, and I mean certified. Currently in the state of Washington, a general jurisdiction officer is only required to have 8 hours of crisis intervention training. With and in 2015, there was legislation that required us to have 2 hours online training in mental health and crisis intervention. But there is no mandate for us to have certification with regard to the 40-hour course. In fact, right now, if we want to send a police officer or a deputy to get certified, we have to go to King County, or we have to go to Pierce County, Spokane County, and that's great. And they come back certified. But here's the issue. All the resources that they learn about are in the county where they trained. So one of the things that I want to do is work with the Criminal Justice Training Commission and different stakeholders here in Whatcom County to create our own 40-hour crisis intervention course. And it wouldn't be just for the sheriff's office, it would be for other first responders here in Whatcom County. Yep, thank you.
Question again?
Question is, according to the Whatcom County Sheriff webpage, primary function of the sheriff is to advocate for improvement and efficiencies in the criminal justice, mental health, and safety systems. What do you advocate for in that area?
Well, certainly from the sheriff's office perspective, I advocate for not just prevention, not just intervention, but professional proactive policing. And I think it takes all of those to ensure public safety. We've spent a lot of time working within the intersection between law enforcement and our crisis services. We have a behavioral health deputy program that I instituted and developed. One of our behavioral health deputies is here in the room. We are the only agency in Whatcom County that has that program. We've recently started the co-responder program where we partner a behavioral health specialist with a deputy. So that is a fairly new program that we're rolling out. The idea is that they respond at the same time to address persons in crisis where they are, as opposed to in the past, we would contact them, try and encourage them to come with us back to Bellingham. When they're out in Glacier, that's not really something that a lot of people are interested in, especially getting in the back of a patrol car. It has a certain connotation, and they're not open to that. So by taking those behavioral health specialists with us in the field where people are, we can provide the tools in an efficient manner that are most appropriate. That may be a law enforcement person from a safety perspective. It may be a behavioral health specialist to address either mental health or substance use disorder issues. But the goal is to get them the services that they need. And again, Mr. Tanksley is absolutely right. All our deputies are trained in crisis intervention training. Our behavioral health deputies get additional crisis intervention training. In addition, by state law enforcement officers currently in the academy get 200 hours of violence de-escalation and mental health training, and then current police officers are supposed to have 40 hours of mental health violence de-escalation training every 3 years.
Thank you. So our last question is the open-ended one, and we'll start with you, Doug. What have we not covered that you would like the voters to know about what you plan to do when elected?
Again, I've been with the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office for 29 years. I'm very proud of my service. Like I said, this is the only home I've ever known. And I want to continue to keep Whatcom County a safe place to live, work, and play for everyone. And this is a nonpartisan position. It's not about politics, it's about public safety, and we're all impacted by public safety. Now, we all may have a different perspective about that, but at the end of the day, the job of the sheriff is to keep Whatcom County safe and to address your public safety concerns. And that's what I intend to do and continue to do as your sheriff. Like I said, I've been second in command to Sheriff Elfo for the last 5 years. I have a long history here in Whatcom County, and I know at this point in time, with the challenges we have, I'm the right person to get the job done. So I hope you support me in November. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I said earlier, I've served my country in different communities for a total of over 38 years. 30 of those years have been in policing. And I've worked in urban areas. I worked on college campuses, small towns. And I believe that my training, my education, my lived experiences from other family members, listening to people. Whatcom County this is the 21st century Whatcom County. We need a 21st century sheriff. You know, I talked to a lot of people that moved here 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I've talked to some folks where their family, their grandfather may have moved here 90 years ago. Came here, worked hard, earned a living, raised a family. Well, I submit to you that we need to provide those opportunities to someone who moved here yesterday. Someone like me who moved here 10 years ago. So when we look at experience, when we look at overall experience, when we look at training, when we look at education, it's undisputed. Undisputed. I am the most qualified person for this job, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. Wish everyone well in their campaigns, and thank you all for coming and listening and being such engaged citizens. Thank you.